play it on your own terms. And I think it's the same at any stage in your life in terms of how you play it on your own terms. And it would come down for me to really reevaluate or evaluate what's my mission today in life and what are my personal core values, and is where I'm spending my time and money consistent with those. Usually if there's a misalignment, that's when you're in a box that's not serving you anymore.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Betsy Pepine. We're going to chat about getting out of your self-limiting boxes. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Do you know what boxes you're living in? Most people don't. They have no idea they're living in a self-created cage. That's our topic today. As we go through it, think about which ones you might be in. We don't cover a ton of examples, but the book has a ton of them in every part of life. Betsy Pepine is a best-selling author and serial entrepreneur in real estate. Her brokerage, Pepine Realty, has been named as an Inc. 5000 fastest-growing private company in the USA, and she's got multiple awards in Florida, where they are located. She is one of the top producing real estate companies in the United States. But today, we're not going to talk about real estate. We're going to talk about boxes. She's endorsed by her mentor, Barbara Corcoran of Shark Tank, and leading media personalities like Dave Ramsey and Glenn Beck. Let's meet Betsy and see what she's got to share. Welcome to Richer Soul, Betsy Pepine. It's great to have you join us today.
So glad to be here, Rocky.
And I'm excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
So what was it like growing up? I grew up in Jersey, and one of 3 daughters. I have a twin sister, identical twin sister, and an older sister. And it was great. My father is still a physician, and my mom stayed at home. In terms of what I learned about money, nothing at school. Really, I didn't. But fortunately, a lot at home, just not learning it, but just watching what my parents did. My parents were a huge proponent of debt-free living. And so we lived well below. Now, as an adult, I see it. I didn't know it at the time. I grew up thinking we were rather poor. And, but they did that by design. We lived very below our means. And so I think it was great looking back. We got an outfit or 2 a year for clothing. We got to go back to school. We got a new outfit. We didn't do extravagant things. We never went out to eat. It was money. And in fact, a couple of times I remember my mother and father, they're sitting us down and saying, money's tight. What I didn't understand was they were saving so that they could put all of us through college and graduate school debt free. And so that's why money was tight. So just seeing that and seeing that modeled, was so important to me. So it was such an instrumental piece of how I managed money as an adult and always have. So while at school, I don't feel that I was taught anything about money. In the home, I definitely was shown.
Were they actually teaching you, or was it more just the way they behaved?
No, it was just the way they behaved. And there was no formal instruction. It was just, although they would say, I just remember always, you just never buy anything you can't afford. You don't put things on credit card. You don't, anything you can't afford except for a house. That was their only exception, except for the house, which you pay off as soon as possible. You never buy anything you can't afford to pay in cash. And so that was ingrained in me since the time I was very little.
That's not a popular message these days.
It's not. It's not.
It's actually kind of the opposite.
It is the opposite. And I mean, I had an economy degree. I understand that math sometimes doesn't always work, that you can have good debt, but I actually don't sleep well if I have unnecessary debt. So I pretty much follow what they did as well. And I sleep well at night. And yes, I know I could be earning a lot more and be worth a lot more if I was willing to leverage myself more. But I also value a good night's sleep.
You have to find harmony for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you still had a very entrepreneurial spirit as a young kid.
Oh, yes, I did.
Now, where did that come from?
I don't know. My mother has told me since I was little, I came out of her womb wanting to make money. And it's not the money. Like, people, I think, sometimes think entrepreneurs are money hungry. Money is of very little value to me in and of itself. Money to me equals freedom. And so mainly freedom of choice. And so that is very important to me. So because freedom of choice is very important to me and having options is very important to me, that's why money is interesting to me. But I'm not materialistic. I live well below my means as well. So it's not so much I'm interested in money for the sake of money. It's more because of the freedom it gets me.
And at one point you did get the big fancy house, right?
I did. And it was one of the worst mistakes of my life. I bought into the idea that because of the success of my business and the role I played in my community, that I needed to have a house that I thought was expected of me. I'm in real estate, so I just felt like I should have a home that looked like I had been successful in real estate. And I was very unhappy in that house. It was very large for us. Lots of entrances and exits to the home. You never knew who was in the house. You had to text somebody, "Hey, are you home?" It just was not. And I was raising two daughters on my own. It wasn't. It never felt like home. And I was fortunate I was there probably 5 or 6 years, and was very fortunate that I grew up next door to my grandparents, and my grandparents' house, who we had sold when my grandmother had passed away. That gentleman called me wanting me to list the house. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to come buy this house. And I got to move back in to next door to my childhood home, but I get to now live in my grandmother's house, which I went from almost 5,000 square feet to 1,600 square feet. And I've never been happier in my housing situation ever. I use every room every day. It feels like home. My children, one of the first things they said was, "Oh my gosh, this feels like home." And we never said that about our old house.
There's a certain thing to closeness. And my kids are grown now, but when they were little, the family room was the kids' room.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody was always in the same place, whether you're cooking or you're eating, or back then if the kids were on their computers or the TV, everything was located in that one space.
Yeah.
Nothing really, when they were little, they didn't even sleep in their bedrooms. They all ended up in our bed, which, so we didn't need all that extra space.
Yeah.
And I think it makes for better connection.
Mm-hmm.
And more conversation than when you're all hidden in your little corners,
right?
And everybody kind of feels alone, and you have no idea what the kids are doing or whether it's good or bad. And
Right.
so,
Right. No, I agree. And I think I took those random opportunities of intersection with the kids in a smaller home for granted. And then when we moved to the larger home, I was like, oh my goodness, my one daughter was upstairs all by herself. My other daughter was on the opposite side of the house. It was not good.
So let's go back to the young entrepreneur. You started off by selling pencils. You made a good business of it. I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah. So in fourth grade, my grandmother had made these, what they called fuzzy pencils, where it's like fake fur on the top of a pencil. And then you roll the pencil in your hand really fast. And the fur kind of looks like it's kind of crazy and the googly eyes go crazy. And so they were all the rage, it seemed, when I brought this pencil that she had made at the church bazaar craft group to school. And so I somehow convinced my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Turner, to turn our classroom into a factory. And we made hundreds of these fuzzy pencils and sold them to the school kids. And I was the treasurer. And I love that. I got to go to the bank. I got to open up the bank account. I got to sign the checks. That to me was just magical. And that was probably my first I have a lot of little, really small businesses since then, but that was the first time when I really saw a business from start to end. And it was like a drug, it was so interesting to me. Yeah. I love the idea of creating something of value, whether it's a product or a service, that people are willing to trade their money, which I value because of the freedom, for something that I have created. I just love that dynamic.
Do you know where that value came from of money equals freedom versus money equals stuff?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if that's a wonderful question. I don't know if that was a message that my parents taught me or that's just what I saw. I'm not sure where that message came from.
Well, out of curiosity, do your siblings, especially your twin, look at things the same way financially?
I don't know. My older sister, she'll tell you this. She's a physician and she went into dermatology because she loves things and wanted to support herself, didn't want to rely on anybody to support the lifestyle that she wanted. And she didn't want to be on call. And so that was ideal. And so she had an objective, went out and got it. My twin sister, she actually doesn't work. She's a physician by training, but she never worked. She got pregnant during residency and then had her child and then has been a stay-at-home mother. So I don't know. I don't really know about that. I don't know.
It's always interesting because I've noticed even within the same family, siblings turn out vastly different with their money stories.
Right.
Usually it's because a certain sibling had a couple of years apart where the parents were in different economic situations.
Yeah.
Or that they internalize it different.
Yeah.
But you having an identical twin, it's like you've almost had the same exposures and yet you never know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
So in spite of this wonderful, idyllic, perfect childhood, as I went through your book, there were what I call a lot of small T traumas, like little things that kind of happened over time that in and of themselves, as parents, you're like, get over it, right? Mm-hmm. But yet as kids, we hold on to it from a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I noticed you told a lot of those stories in the book as you went through. I didn't know if you wanted to touch base on any of that or just kind of put it in context.
Well, especially, as a parent, it was very scary to me because my first thought was, oh my gosh, what have I done to my own children that created their small T traumas? I know my parents only had my best interest at heart. And so, and to see how some of those decisions impacted me, and some things I've tried to discuss with them and they don't even remember them. And it's like, these were just huge life events. And I'm like, wow. that's scary how much impact we as parents can have on our children, not even know it. But for me, that probably the biggest trauma would be small T trauma would be, I really felt a lot of pressure to be a physician. That has stayed with me for a long time, and hurt my sense of worth, because I'm not a physician and everybody else in my family is. And so, and it was the message that I received was that if you're not a physician, I mean, the physician is the pedestal, and anything else you choose is just this giant leap below it. And so that was really difficult for me because I really didn't want to be a physician. And that carried me into adulthood and feeling less than because I didn't choose the path that my family chooses. So that's probably the biggest trauma. And I tried to raise my children, whatever you want, just, be, whatever gives you pleasure, is most important. That was probably the biggest small T trauma. I think the other one is just my mother in particular was very concerned about, her daughter's appearance and weight especially. She was obsessed with our weight. And, that's not, I don't think, healthy.
I have some good news for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right now in the world of healthcare, being a doctor pretty much sucks in most places. They have all turned into corporate employees in many situations, and they're just told what to do, where to go. And it's not a fun space anymore.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
You missed all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
But you still had success. You went to the Wharton School of Business, have an MBA. Mm-hmm. And I always ask, because I've learned over the years that the name on the outside of the college is not indicative of what happens inside. Mm-hmm. Was it all that for you?
It was like a lot of things I have found that have a certain prestige associated with them. It's the hardest part is getting in the door. And then once you get in the door, it's like, this is, I don't want to say nothing special, but this is probably like any other, school. But it's hard for me to know because I didn't go to other schools. But I know I've been on college campuses where, like, I went to Duke, and I used to think, oh gosh, that was just, and I love Duke, don't get me wrong, but I used to put it on a pedestal. And then I've been to, much less prestigious state schools. I walk into their dorms and they're like 5-star hotels. And Duke's campus, they haven't been renovated in 50 years. I mean, literally, my daughter went to Duke 30 years after I did. And I walked into her freshman dorm, and it was literally what appeared to be the exact same furniture that was there when I was in that dorm. And I'm like, I'm paying $70,000 for this. And you go to the state school down the road from me, and they're living in literally homes, amenities, much nicer than my own home. So it's interesting how,
it's a game.
Yeah.
And when you understand it's a game.
Yeah. But sadly, it does open doors. It becomes people's screening. It's almost like, I think sometimes you get a break because it's like, oh, well, if so-and-so went here or got this award or whatever, they must be X. Again, you're put into a box, and it also it becomes, then it seems like the person evaluating you suddenly thinks differently of you, which they should not, but they do. And it gives you access and privilege.
It did much more so in the past.
Totally.
And
I totally agree.
I think today it will open doors for you. Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with you at all. However, I think that mold is being broken. And there are other ways in the door. And in the world of infinite connection, meaning social media,
totally.
events, conferences, all these things, it doesn't matter. And actually, we'll talk about that in a little bit because you've been to a lot of events. And I'm wondering how much anyone even cares at those events.
Oh, no. No, one cares. Once you get in the door, nobody cares about anything, nor do they remember. No, I totally agree with that. And I also think, I hire a lot of people in not only as agents, but in management. And I never even ask if they've gone to college. I don't care. I'm looking at their experience. And so, I mean, I don't know if it's like that in other industries. I'm certainly not some. You need certain training and things. But no, I think it's so much less important. And in fact, if you truly know what you want to do after high school, go for it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But no, I definitely think it's totally changed. I think the value of a college degree is getting more questionable by the day.
Well, I think that's because of the price of it, not because, and that's a big driver.
Yes.
It's funny because I know, especially with physicians, they're trying to go to prestigious undergrad schools, which is absurd because nobody ever asks a doctor where they went to undergrad, right? So who cares where you went? Because they're going to look at where you went to med school, not where you went to that.
Right.
And yes, the rules are changing. At the end of the day, calculus is calculus. And it's not, they can't teach you better calculus in an Ivy League than at a community college because it's essentially the same calculus. So, what I told my son was do your undergraduate wherever. And then if you need it or want it, go get your grad school in a prestigious place where you don't even have to pay that much for it. And so that's what he kind of did and working well. So we're here to talk about your book. What inspired you to write the book, Breaking Boxes, Dismantling the Metaphorical Boxes That Bind Us?
So I wrote that book. Had nothing to do with real estate in my day job. I wrote that book because several years ago, I was finding myself discontent. And actually, it took me a long time to even admit that to myself because I know that I am blessed in so many ways and see so many people who are so less fortunate than I. So how I didn't feel like I had the right to be unhappy, but I wasn't happy. And so when I finally admitted that to myself and said, okay, let's change something, reading and meditation and yoga and therapy and bioenergetics work and EMDR and all these different modalities, I uncovered that a lot of the source of my unhappiness was because of this feeling of containment and not feeling like I could be myself, be accepted and be myself. I kind of describe it if you've ever had the misfortune of ordering a bed mattress from Amazon, it arrives on your porch in a box. And you're like, there's no way that king size mattress is in that box. And you pull the box inside, you rip off the tape and this mattress is in this box. And then you walk by it for 2 days. And then suddenly this thing has expanded to the size it was meant to be. I felt like I was in this box and not been allowed to escape. And so started talking to other people about my experiences and found they also had similar experiences and shared some of their boxes and why they stayed, why they didn't, were they even aware that they were in a box? And I just thought, gosh, if I could just help one person be enlightened into maybe recognizing a box that's no longer serving them and giving them the courage to take baby steps to exit, then the effort would have been worthwhile. So that's what got me to write the book.
This episode of Richer Soul is sponsored by the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you're a business owner who wants to scale and grow, increase profits, or want to have strategic conversations around your financials, then check out the podcast. You'll learn how to work less, increase cash flow, increase profits, and build reserves to help you weather storms. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So let's look at some of these boxes, right? Some of them are parental, right? Your parents, unless you're a physician, then, you're not on the pedestal. There's boxes like you talked, they went to this Ivy League school, so they must be, or they went to a non-Ivy League school, so they must not be. And there's so many other boxes that are out there that, that we come across. I just love to kind of hear from you some of the different examples that.
Oh goodness, they're everywhere. Gender's a big one. Both way. I mean, either gender or all the genders, whatever. Yes, they all have their own boxes. Your industry will put you in certain boxes. Your age. I have a girlfriend who decided to go gray during COVID, and then saw her about a year ago, and she had the color of my hair, which is dark brown. And I was like, what happened? And she's like, I was invisible. She said, people just totally ignored me. Store clerks in the store would ignore her because she had gray hair. And I've heard that a lot from people who have gray hair. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy that just because of the color of your hair, you suddenly don't exist. So age is one. I talked to a gentleman who his health status was one, which I had never even thought of, but he was a diabetic, and he very much felt like he was in a box based on his health status. I talked to another gentleman. I asked him about his biggest box, and he's it was a large African-American guy. And he said, everybody assumes that he was a football player and that he plays football. He's like, I don't know anything about football. I don't care about football. I don't like football, but everyone pegged him as a football player. So sometimes your physical features put you in a box. Your friends and family, your peers, your society, your religion, it's everywhere. Your role, the roles that you play in your life. If you're a husband, what's a good husband? What's a good wife? What's a good daughter? What's a good son in your own social network?
There's tons of boxes. It's funny because you brought up the health condition, and you said, well, he was a diabetic. And I was in the medical space for a long time. So in that sense, people are associating themselves with their degree, their disease instead of, and you see that even with cancer survivors, right?
Yeah. Mostly.
They associate themselves with their disease, not, hey, I'm a person who happened to have this.
Yeah.
But they put themselves in their own box.
Right. No,
and they're gladly happy to sit there in it.
Right. And it becomes their identity. No, I know.
Why do people stay in boxes that no longer serve them?
So I think one is there is a lack of awareness that they're even there. Sometimes there's a lack of awareness that they're even in a box, which means they don't understand and don't recognize that there's options outside of that box. Right. So if you're not aware, you can't do anything about your situation. But for those that are aware and still choose to stay, and I have been one of those people, I think it comes down to fear. And it's usually a fear-based fear of failure, fear of change, or fear of loss. Those are the three major fears I feel like that hold me back and hold other people back. I try to address them head on. Fear of failure, I don't feel like that one impacts me at all anymore. Failure to me is another label. It's another box that we put outcomes in. What I could deem as failure, somebody else would probably love the opportunity, right? Just to be even in the arena. So failure is just a label that I choose not to identify with. To me, worst. So I say, okay, well, Betsy, what's the worst that can happen if I choose X or do X? Worst case scenario, it doesn't happen. The outcome is not what I wanted. I have to pivot, and I will have learned something very valuable that I get to take with me and that makes me a better person for the remainder of my time here. That's worst case scenario. That doesn't sound so bad to me. And studies have shown worst case scenario happens 3% of the time. That's a risk I'm willing to take. So I don't even think about that anymore. I really don't. I think if people actually thought through the worst case scenarios, they would realize this is silly. This is not something that I should entertain. The other two, fear of change. That's a real one. Humans love this, love everything to stay the same, even though the most consistent thing that we know is that everything changes. But even when change is good, we resist it. I see that all the time. I think that to me is a muscle. The more you get comfortable being uncomfortable, and the more you get comfortable being around uncertainty, the less that you have that fear. So I really do try to either do something uncomfortable every day, put myself purposely outside my comfort zone, and or do something new every day so that I'm constantly strengthening that muscle. Even if every morning I start out with a ice cold shower, because I know at minimum that makes me very uncomfortable. I live in Florida. I like the heat, but I know at minimum, if I do nothing else, I've made myself uncomfortable for at least 5 minutes, and I survived. It helps build that muscle. And then the last one is fear of loss, and it could be loss of status, like I had in my family. I definitely lost status when I told them I wanted to go into real estate. Loss of social connection, which, anytime you move the chess pieces, right? It's like a game. You make a move, you're moving the board. The game has changed. You are going to shift who's in your life. That's a fact. People are going to be uncomfortable. They're not going to agree. It's going to threaten them. And you have to shore up those social connections. You're moving into a new future. Who can you get in your circle to help you shore up the ones that are you leaving behind, right? And then the last one is just fear of financial loss, which I think nowadays is not so much a fear, because you've got the gig economy, you've got remote work, you've got the internet, you've got so many ways to supplement your income while you're trying to transition out of one box into a new one, that I don't think that one is as much at play anymore.
You know what's worse than the worst case scenario?
Yes, not even putting yourself in the arena.
Yeah, the regret of not trying.
Right.
People who've been through this and have had worst case are happy because they said it was better than the regrets of not doing it.
Right.
And they were okay with that.
Yeah.
Being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I'm still working on that one. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable. I'm content being comfortable, but you can't grow then.
That's what I feel like. Because I feel like I'm most comfortable being uncomfortable, because growth is so important to me. And I've never grown being comfortable. You can't.
No. And the game board, though, to me, that's a box. And I'll say why, because I'm actually we're in a group that's working on longevity, and retirement's not the right word for it, but pretty much everyone in the group has financial success and might be semi-retired. Mm-hmm. It comes down to, how do you play on your own game board where you make the rules? Mm-hmm. You decide what the game board is, and you get to live life on your terms without any care of what society thinks about your game, and just letting go of that all. And that's a big part of it. But you gotta, in order to do that though, you got to let go of all the baggage, which is all the stuff that we've been talking about, because you can't play on your own if you're stuck holding all that weight. You were going to ask a question.
I was.
We were talking
about the end game and how to play it on your own terms. And I think it's the same at any stage in your life in terms of how you play it on your own terms. And it would come down for me to really reevaluate or evaluate my what's my mission today in life, and what are my personal core values, and is where I'm spending my time and money consistent with those. Usually if there's a misalignment, that's when you're in a box that's not serving you anymore.
And I always say, show me your calendar and show me your bank statement, and I can tell you what your values are.
Right. You may not like them, but
you may not like
your
them.
current values are. Correct. That's what I tell people.
Well, I think a lot of times people say they want to do X and Y.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, I'm too busy to, and they don't realize, well, it's because you're not doing it.
Right.
And I think a lot of it is just unconscious habit.
Yeah.
And until they get conscious of it, they can't change it.
Right. Exactly. You got to be aware. And then sometimes even you're aware, it's hard to, habits are habits for a reason. So sometimes it's hard to change.
If you choose to make it hard.
Right. That's true.
It's funny how many habits can be changed in a split second, though. But it takes a pretty strong decision, will, and fortitude to just say, I'm going to do it this way from now on. And then breaking your patterns is never easy.
Yeah.
So remove all the obstacles and then it becomes easier.
Yeah. I remember Tony Robbins has some story where I don't remember what the goal was. He wanted to change something in his life. It may have been losing weight. I feel like it was losing weight or becoming healthier or something, but in a finite period of time. So what he did, and I try to do this in other areas of my life since hearing his story, is he's like, okay, this is something I want to commit to. It's not going to be fun or pleasant, but how can I make it the most fun? And so he's like, okay, if I was in a pretty location, so he went to Fiji for this duration of a couple months. He's like, if I was surrounded by friends, so every week he flew out a different group of friends for him to be with. So it would make it easier. And then there was a couple other things that he did so that even though he had to do this one thing that was not pleasant, he's like, what can I control in my environment to make it as painless as possible? And so that's what I do with my cold shower every morning. I can't stand the cold shower at all. And I said to myself, well, how can I make this more, durable? So I will save a podcast that I'm very interested in. And I bought a little suction cup holder for my phone. I play the podcast while I'm under the shower. And I look forward to it now because I really want to listen to the podcast. And so it's like, okay, it takes my mind off of what I need to do. I'm watching a podcast that I'm looking forward to. And it's like, how can we create fun around something, even though it's something that we may consciously or, subconsciously, we don't want to do it, but we know we have to for the change that we want to make in our lives. What can we control to make it tolerable?
And that's all you can control is whatever is in your control, not the uncontrollables, and learn to know the difference and then focus on what is. Yeah. Now you've done to a lot of events and we'll talk about some of them. And you've also had some great mentors like, Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. How did that come to be? So the gentleman that I buy my television and radio ads space from, he has an agency in New York City. He knows Barbara. And so it had to have been at least maybe 10 years ago or so. He reached out to me and asked me if I would want a relationship with her. And absolutely. I had read her books. I had followed her in real estate. And it's been a wonderful relationship for me to see somebody that has been where I want to go. It's kind of like we talked about earlier about kind of Wharton and the schools of having this kind of, but what happens once you get there? It's just kind of like with Barbara, it's like, you just realize she's just like everybody else. She just did it. She put her nose to the ground and did it. And so I love having role models like that in my life to remind me that if I want something, I can get it too. And I think at the end of the day, more often than not, it's that she didn't hold herself in a box and say, I can't. She started doing the work, and you start small and you just keep showing up. Yeah. Even when you don't want to, even when it's ugly, even when it doesn't work out. Right. And you start to learn, and over time you improve. And that's what it is. It's funny. Everybody wants success, but nobody's willing to do what it takes to have the success. They all want the end result. Yeah. Not the work in between. And I'm sure she had a lot of setbacks and a lot of things that she had to go through to get where she is.
Yeah. She had to rebuild her first brokerage. Her husband, from what I understand, took it with him in the divorce. So then she had to rebuild again and then sold it just splendidly. I think it was the largest real estate brokerage sale at the time. And then she petitioned herself to be on Shark Tank and had gotten it verbally, I think, but then they tried to relinquish it. And she talked herself into getting a live audition and got her way onto that, which helped rebrand her from just being a real estate mogul to a true businesswoman. So it was a wonderful strategy.
Everyone thinks it just comes on a silver platter.
Yeah. No.
You've also done a lot of other stuff. You run your business on EOS.
Mm-hmm.
You do Profit First,
Mm-hmm.
Strategic Coach, Genius Network. You met Tony Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
What have all of these different programs and systems, how have they helped you? And if you want to go one by one, that's fine, or whatever you think is best.
So Tony Robbins, years ago, I haven't really been involved with Tony Robbins in years, but years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I had always listened to his motivational tapes and things like that at the time. I did go to, and I read his books and I loved them. I did go to a course. I don't know which one. I think it's Business Mastery, down in South Florida. And I actually did leave early. It was not for me. It just was, just not me at all. It just felt, and I know he's done great things. And I know a lot of people love Tony Robbins, and I do love what he does for people. But for me personally, it just felt too, I don't know, I left early. So, it's the only time I've ever left early of a conference. And it was a quite expensive conference for me at the time, but it wasn't for me. So, but I love his books and his message. Strategic Coach, I love. That's really, what I love about Strategic Coach is it helps you. One, you're surrounded with like-minded people who are interested in growth. And it really focuses on you as a whole being, not just your business. And so I have more free time now and a more balanced life now than I've ever had. And I've been in Strategic Coach for, I think this will be my third or fourth year. So really love that. It gives you a lot of tools that you can bring back to your office. And I love to share with others what I've learned. And so I've been able to do that as well. So that's been really, really good. EOS has been life-changing for my company. We implemented that. We started the process it's 3.5 years ago when we started. And it was a process. It was very painful. I lost a whole layer of people that had been with me for a long time that were used to doing things without systems and processes. And they didn't like the new structure. And that was painful for me personally to lose people that had been with me for a decade. But I knew if I wanted to take the company where I wanted to take it, I had to make changes. And so that's been great. I wish I had done it from day one, but I didn't even know about it. So that's been wonderful. And then Genius Network, I am not in that anymore. I was in it for 1 year, a great network of people, incredibly giving, an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset. Everybody in the room wants to help everybody else. And I think there's at most 1 degree of separation between everybody in that room and everybody else in the world, truly. So if you need those kinds of connections, it is definitely something to look into.
And the last one was Profit First, the one we love.
Yeah. So I didn't mean to exclude that. It's just
okay.
So I've read the book, and I actually teach the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace class, which is very similar on a personal level, and then Profit First is for business. So a lot of similarities, and I really like that. I do follow some of the steps in Profit First in terms of how we do our expenses and who we pay first and second. So that's been great as well. And it really falls into line with how I was raised. So that it all marries very well together.
And I think across all of these things, you're given universal principles that probably flow from one to the other.
They do. And it also, I highly recommend to my agents and staff to get out of your box, get out of your your geographical area and go to these kinds of meetings, because it really opens your eyes up, especially if you live in a not large city. You just get ideas and connections, and you see the bigger picture. Something that my father was so adamant about growing up is international travel. And so we all traveled internationally with him. He would take one of his daughters with him on every international trip. And so my sisters and I each had anywhere from 5 to 10 international trips, before we launched. And that changes your perspective on you, your life, your role in the society. And the same thing happens when you go away into these meetings that are not in your hometown. So highly recommend these kinds of organizations to get involved with.
It's amazing how, and it's true even of large cities, they all have their own way of doing things. And when you go somewhere else, you start to see that there are so many other possibilities. And when you leave the country, it's night and day.
Oh my gosh.
It is totally night and day.
Yeah.
Of how the rest of the world tends to do things, how they view things, and so forth. And so it's always interesting to do that and to see that, and also to get out of your box, so to speak, and see other opportunities that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of get back to the book. One of the recurring themes in there was shame, it seemed like, throughout. And yet it's not something people talk about, right? We're not so vulnerable about those things that maybe they're within our head or so forth. Yet you talked about them a deal in the book. How has that kind of helped others? I mean, I'm sure that, once other people read it, they start to open conversations with you.
Mm-hmm. I think so. And I agree with you. I think it's like taboo to talk about, it seems like, or maybe there's even a lack of awareness of it. I mean, I don't know that I even understood it, and still don't fully, even though, it was very, one of the most frequent sentences I heard from my mother is, "You should be ashamed of yourself." That growing up, that was her way of communicating to us. And, but that was how she was raised. Like, I don't blame her, because she didn't know better. And, so that's just hard to overcome, I think, when you're told that from a young age. And that's why I think I have personally struggled with not self-confidence. I have a really, I think, strong sense of self-confidence, but self-worth, which sometimes people confuse the two. But I think that's where the shame comes in, is that, just not feeling of value, just innately of value.
If I remember correctly, she grew up Catholic?
Mm-hmm. Oh, she's dying a very strong Catholic too. Yeah, she's 84. And yeah,
I think that's a box for them.
Yeah, it is. And I didn't know that until, growing up, Catholicism was all I knew.
Right.
And I remember when I went to, I raised my children Methodist, and I was very active in that church. And I remember I would teach a class there with the kids, and I had to cancel and not give them much notice. And I felt awful about it. And I called, and I was just like, "I'm so sorry. I cannot come." And, the woman was just like, "Oh, don't worry about it, Betsy." And I said, "I feel so guilty." And she's like, "Betsy, we don't do guilt here." And I literally said, "I'm sorry, could you say that again?" Because I did not know. It stopped me in my tracks. And it was just like, oh, wow. It just felt so freeing that could be a life that you lived, where you don't feel any guilt. I just didn't even know what that would even, look like. And it was amazing to me. And that was one of the reasons I stayed at that church for so long, is because I never felt shame, just love and acceptance. And that was so beautiful to me.
It's funny kind of how you said, "Oh, I didn't even know we didn't have to feel guilty." Mm-hmm. Like it was so ingrained. Yeah. It was definitely a box. Mm-hmm. Wow. I wonder how many people when they start to look in the mirror, will start to see how many boxes they put themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are tons of them. And you talked about many of them in a variety of different ways throughout the book. And I guess that really comes down to questioning everything.
Mm-hmm. I remember it's like a similar aha moment was when I took a class and you had a personality assessment. It wasn't a typical one. I don't remember what it was for, but it wasn't like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC. This was, you got assigned a country based on the way you answered questions. And my country was control. I lived in the country of control, apparently. And the country I scored lowest in was fun, the fun country. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's no way I'd scored 0 points in the fun country. And so I said, let me take this again. So I took the quiz again, another big fat 0 in the fun. And I was like, this can't be. And they matched you so once you got your scores back, they matched you. So I scored low, the lowest on fun. And so they matched me with somebody who had their highest score was fun. And this woman told me her first thought every morning was, how am I going to have fun today? That is her first thought every morning. And I was like, it was so eye-opening to me. I'm like, really? Like, I don't know that I've ever said that to myself a day in my life, let alone every single morning. Betsy, how are you going to have fun today? Like, how different my life would be if that's the first thought in every single day. And I'm like, people live like that. And I was like, wow, how free. It's like the guilt. It's just like, oh my goodness. I loved it and loved being able to witness that this was how this person, and clearly she was raised in a very different world, but it's like it's just so beautiful.
So do you ask yourself that in the morning?
So I don't ask myself that in the morning, but I actually, I think I mentioned I have a habit tracker. I don't know if I mentioned I have a habit tracker. I have a habit tracker and I just track habits that I want to become ingrained in my life. And the ones that I've successfully habituated, I then can take off of the habit tracker. But the fun one I consistently leave on because it does remind me, because I know it does not come naturally for me. I have to plan it. And so it really forces me to make an intention of having fun.
Is there anything from the book that we should have touched on that we didn't get a chance to yet?
I think you were pretty thorough. I think we're good.
Well, that's good.
There is a core. I do have so the book is story based. And so a lot of people have said, oh, this is great. Can I have some more kind of information on how do I get out of boxes? And I delve into it a little bit, but not a lot. So I did follow it up with, and I recorded it a couple of weeks ago, but there is a companion course coming out, which is much less story based and more of a how-to.
Yeah. I find most books, there's always the story half. Mm-hmm. And then there's the how-to half. Sometimes it's 2 books. Sometimes it's 1 book.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's never the how-to. There's just the story.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck going, but how do I do this?
Exactly.
And for a lot of people, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's like peeling the onion, you peel one layer and you're like, damn, there's another layer. And then you peel that and it's like, oh no, another one too. And there are a variety of ways to do it. And I think it comes down to what is the one that works for you
mm-hmm.
and which path are you going, what resonates with you? What will you actually do?
Mm-hmm.
And show up and continue at. And I think that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the first step I think is the hardest, which is to identify the boxes you find yourself stuck in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't think most people realize they're stuck in it. They're uneasy,
mm-hmm.
but they don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And until you start examining it
mm-hmm.
and start to look through it. And honestly, from what I can tell, I think the majority of boxes were created as kids. Mm-hmm. So you're still living in that refrigerator box that,
yeah. mm-hmm.
that you played with as a kid and you don't realize you're stuck in it.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Interesting. I feel that I have an abundant mindset. I don't have a scarcity mindset. So I think that helps me have an abundant life because my mindset is one of abundance. It's not a zero-sum game. And I think the more collaboration and generosity we give, the more we receive. So I think that mindset helps me live an abundant life.
And you have to have an abundant mindset. Otherwise, you can't live an abundant life, right? Because scarcity isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Oh gosh, so many things. So many things. One of the best things my father taught me in college, he said to me, I was supposed to go on a trip. He on these international trips I alluded to that he would invite, he would take us on. So I had a trip in college to go to China. And this was the year before the Tiananmen Square incident. And I told him I couldn't go because I would miss a week of school at Duke. And I just didn't feel like I could make up the work. And my father, who is incredibly values education so much, said, Betsy, are you going to remember a week at Duke or are you going to remember a trip to China in 5 years? And he was right. I mean, I went to China. I still remember that trip. I don't remember anything about the week I missed. I don't remember any individual weeks at Duke anyway. And so I try to have that mindset. Like, is it really worth worrying about? Is it, in that 5-year time frame? If I'm not going to remember it in 5 years, it's small stuff.
99% of stuff is small stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
I would want it to be a message of, go your own way. Don't feel like you have to appease people and what you do or choose to be or who you choose to be with or how you choose to identify or whatever it is. Just be authentic and be yourself. Be comfortable in your own skin.
Don't live in a box, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Especially other people's boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to live in a box, you might as well pick your own, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
If people would like to learn more about you, find the book, how can they do that?
So I have a website, my name, betsypepine.com, and that's about me and my book. My book is also on all the major online book retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, those stores. And then I'm on all the social channels at my name, Betsy Pepine.
And we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. My pleasure.
Did any boxes show up for you? Maybe it's religious, the way you look, where you are in your life, a health condition. Do you feel stuck and believe you can't change it? That's a box. Your age, gender, all boxes. You can break free of any one you choose not to hold on to. And we have episodes that focus on that. One that comes to mind is the Sedona method, where we just show you how simply you can just let go. Check it out. Who do you know who's living in a box and could benefit from listening to today's episode? Would you do me a favor and share it with them? I'd appreciate that. Next week, we've got Dr. Pajunan, and we're going to talk about living longer and healthier and biohacking that longevity curve. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.